The Galactic Academy's combat engineering course was legendary for breaking even the most confident cadets. Instructor Jothik, a towering Kralon with 4 arms and scales that shimmered like polished obsidian, had never seen a species quite as peculiar as humans. When Susan Chen and Lucas Morrison enrolled in his advanced weapons design class, he'd been skeptical. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely a decade since first contact, and their technology was primitive by most standards. Today's assignment, Jothik announced, his translator converting his clicking speech into standard galactic, requires each of you to design and construct a ranged weapon using only materials from the supply depot. You have 4 standard cycles. The weapon must be capable of disabling my reconnaissance drone at 50 meters. The other students, Vryn warriors, Keltorian engineers, and a pair of crystalline shardlings, immediately rushed to claim plasma capacitors, magnetic accelerators, and graviton emitters. Susan watched them with quiet amusement, her dark eyes tracking the organized chaos. Lucas, meanwhile, wandered toward a corner of the depot that everyone else had ignored. "What are you thinking?" Susan asked, following her human classmate. Lucas held up a piece of elastic polymer tubing and a curved piece of lightweight alloy. His grin was infectious. "I'm thinking old school." "You can't be serious." Susan crossed her arms. "Everyone else is building directed energy weapons or railguns, and you want to make—" "What exactly?" "A slingshot." Lucas's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Trust me." While other students assembled complex firing mechanisms and power sources, Lucas spent the first cycle simply testing materials. He stretched various elastic compounds, measuring their tensile strength by hand. He carved the alloy into a Y-shaped frame, smoothing it until it fit perfectly in his grip. Susan, despite her initial doubts, found herself drawn into his process. There was something methodical about his approach, something deeply human. "Your ancestors used these?" she asked, watching him braid synthetic fibers into a pouch. "For thousands of years." Lucas tied off the final knot. Before gunpowder, before metallurgy really took off, humans used slings and slingshots. David killed Goliath with a sling. Hunters fed entire tribes. It's elegant in its simplicity. By the 3rd cycle, the other students had impressive weapons. A Vryn cadet had constructed a plasma projector that hummed with barely contained energy. One of the Keltorians had built a miniaturized railgun that could theoretically punch through ship armor. Even the shardlings had grown crystal launchers from their own bodies. Lucas had a slingshot. Instructor Jothik made his rounds, examining each creation with his experienced eye. He nodded approvingly at the plasma projector, clicked thoughtfully at the railgun, and seemed genuinely impressed by the biological weapons. When he reached Lucas's station, all 4 of his eyes focused on the primitive device. "Explain," Jothik demanded. Lucas picked up a smooth steel sphere he'd found in the depot, a bearing, originally meant for some mechanical system. "It's a slingshot, Instructor. I pull back the elastic band's release and kinetic energy does the rest. No power source needed, no complex mechanisms to fail, just physics." The classroom fell silent. Someone snickered. A Vryn cadet's translator barely concealed his words. The human brought a toy to a weapons test. Jothik's scales rippled, the Kralon equivalent of a raised eyebrow. "You may proceed to the testing range." The range was a vast chamber with the instructor's drone hovering at precisely 50 meters. It was a sleek thing, all sensors and reactive plating, capable of dodging most conventional attacks. One by one, students took their shots. The plasma projector fired a brilliant bolt that the drone easily evaded, its AI predicting the trajectory. The railgun's projectile was fast, but the drone's shields absorbed the impact. Each attempt followed a similar pattern: impressive technology, predictable results. The drone had been programmed to counter every known weapon type in the galactic database, but it had never encountered a human with a slingshot. Lucas stepped up to the firing line. He loaded the bearing into the leather pouch, drew back the elastic bands, and took a breath. Susan watched his face, the way his eyes narrowed, calculating distance and drop. His ancestors had done this exact motion while hunting mammoths, while fighting wars, while surviving. The drone's sensors locked onto Lucas, analyzing the primitive weapon in his hands. Its combat algorithms found no match in his database. It hovered, confused, waiting for some recognizable threat. Lucas released. The bearing flew in a perfect arc, moving faster than most of the class expected. The drone's evasion protocol kicked in a fraction too late. It had prioritized threats based on energy signatures and electronic activation. A simple kinetic projectile launched by elastic force didn't register as dangerous until the bearing struck its central sensor array. The drone's lights flickered. It wobbled. Then it fell from the sky with a satisfying crash. The testing range erupted in shocked silence, then chaotic noise. The Vryn cadet who'd mocked Lucas stood with his mouth agape. The Keltorians began frantically recalculating their understanding of human engineering. Susan laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. Instructor Jothic approached Lucas, all four arms crossed over his chest. For a long moment, he simply stared at the human cadet and his primitive weapon. Then his scales rippled in what humans would later learn was Kralon laughter. "Explain your methodology," he said. Lucas shrugged. Everyone else was thinking about what technology they could use. "I thought about what would work. The drone's AI is sophisticated. It recognizes threats based on your species' weapons databases. But humans aren't in those databases yet, not really. Our primitive weapons are invisible to advanced targeting systems." "And the execution?" Jothic picked up the slingshot, examining it with new respect. "Practice, Instructor. Humans have excellent hand-eye coordination. We evolved as persistence hunters and tool users. Give us something to throw and we'll hit the target. It's what we do." Jothic handed back the slingshot. "You understand that you've just demonstrated a critical flaw in our defensive systems?" "Yes, sir." "And that every military in the galaxy will now have to account for low-tech kinetic weapons in their combat algorithms?" Lucas grinned. "Yes, sir." The instructor's scales shimmered with amusement. "Highest marks, Cadet Morrison. You've taught this class and this instructor a valuable lesson. Advanced technology is worthless if you forget the fundamentals." He turned to address the entire class. "Remember this moment. The humans have been in space for barely a decade, yet they've just outthought every one of you. Not with superior technology, but with superior adaptation." As the class filed out, Susan bumped Lucas's shoulder. "Show off." "Hey, I just built what I knew would work." "That's exactly what makes you dangerous," she said, smiling. "You humans and your habit of making the impossible look simple." Lucas looked down at his slingshot, at the weapon his ancestors would recognize across thousands of years. "Maybe that's our thing. Everyone else reaches for the stars with technology. We bring the cave with us. And in a galaxy full of plasma rifles and graviton cannons, sometimes the most dangerous weapon was the one nobody saw coming, wielded by a species that never forgot where they came from."